In this short lecture, we will discuss the causes, events, and results of the Upper Canada Rebellion of 1837. The roots of the Upper Canada Rebellion of 1837 can be traced back to 1791, when several thousand United Empire Loyalists fled from the American Revolution towards Lower Canada. As this part of British North America was mostly populated by Francophones, the Loyalists looked to settle west of Lower Canada, as they wanted to establish a government which was separated from Quebec and the Francophone influence. Therefore, they settled in a province neighboring Lower Canada in the west and created Upper Canada by the Constitutional Act of 1791. Upper Canada was founded by men and women who had fled the 13 colonies due to their loyalty towards the British Crown, and the population was later enforced by immigrants from the British Isles. So the political base of Upper Canada was fairly conservative. After some years, the conservative vision was no longer accepted by the vast majority of Upper Canadians, as it secured privileges for the Church of England and the Crown, attempted to exclude American settlers, and favored certain businesses. Starting in the 1820s, the government's critics started to form a loose group of opposition, and the Reformers won the Upper Canada elections of 1828 and again in 1834. Although the opposition struggled with several internal disagreements, most reformers agreed that the conservative government was too oligarchic and held too much power and privileges. The reformers' wish for more equality intensified with the revolts that occurred in Europe in 1830, even though these had been unsuccessful. Although many reformers voiced interesting ideas of how to run Upper Canada, most seemed too moderate in the eyes of William Lyon Mackenzie. Mackenzie had come to Upper Canada in 1820 and was elected to the Assembly in 1828. Although he was repeatedly expelled from it in the early 1830s for slandering conservative members, he always managed to re-emerge from those disputes as the winner, and was eventually elected as mayor of Toronto in 1834. Nevertheless, Sir Francis Bond Head was the new lieutenant governor appointed to Upper Canada in 1836, who immediately tried to win over the reformers by appointing two of them, Robert Baldwin and Dr. John Rolfe, into his executive council. After the reformers demanded that Head should accept their advice on certain important issues, Head declined. When Head then demanded that the reformers withdraw their request, which in turn was declined by them, Head appointed a new council, which was composed entirely by Tories. In following re-elections, many reformers were hindered from voting, leading to the Tories taking over twice as many seats as the reformers. The Upper Canada Rebellion was not only triggered by political problems, but by economic hardships as well. In 1836, the potato and wheat harvest had been unusually small, which was quickly reflected by the prices. The economy of Upper Canada was based on a chain of credit, which locked British wholesalers, Upper Canadian retailers, and local farmers in an interdependent relationship. So as soon as the farmers felt the results of the poor harvest, the downward spiral was felt by others as well. By the beginning of 1837, cash had become very short, and the interest rates on the money, which was available, were climbing. The economic troubles only added pressure to the political dissatisfaction. Mackenzie blamed Head for the situation, and thereby blamed the British government as well. On July 19th, Mackenzie published an article in his newspaper, The Constitution, in which he compared the dissatisfaction of the Upper Canada reformers to those of the American revolutionaries, and proposed that the reformers form political unions, which might be easily transferred to military purposes. Mackenzie later claimed that 200 unions had been created, although it is believed that the number actually ranged between 20 and 25. Although the movements caused some tensions between Tories and reformers, they were generally peaceful and hardly ever involved military training. Although Mackenzie had suggested that the unions might be militarized, he himself wrote in an article on the Constitution on September 13th that their primary goal was agitation, agitation, agitation. At this time, Head was certain that the unions did not represent any danger to Upper Canada, and he sent all British forces to Lower Canada as the situation in the neighboring province worsened day by day. But Mackenzie decided with the troops gone it would be the ideal moment to strike. He and several other reformers planned to take Toronto and appoint Dr. John Rolfe as the head of a provisional government. The actual rebellion did not start until December 4th. On December 3rd, Mackenzie had received a message from Rolfe stating that the government had heard about their plot, and despite Mackenzie's efforts to stop the reformers, they started their rebellion prematurely. After a brawl outside Montgomery's Tavern north of Toronto had left 2 dead and 2 injured on December 4th, Head quickly tried to organize a militia composed of volunteers as the British forces were still fighting in Lower Canada, and the main line of defense was neither organized nor trained. Mackenzie gathered approximately 500 rebels and started walking towards Toronto on December 5th, where he planned to take the city's arms and ammunition, which were stored at City Hall. On the way south, they met a truce party, but the demands were not accepted by either side, and Mackenzie continued his march towards Toronto until being stopped at Montgomery's Tavern, where they were attacked by Loyalists. The reformers fled, and the Loyalists burned down the tavern. Although the reformers had lost the Battle of Montgomery's Tavern, news spread quickly that the reformers had been successful, and a group of reformers from London, a district in Upper Canada, started marching towards Mackenzie to support his troops. When they encountered the Loyalist troops under Colonel Allan MacNab on December 13th, the reformers fled, putting an end to the Upper Canada Rebellion. Although reformers kept fighting British troops, the battles after December 13th, 1837, were of a much smaller scale and did not have any influence on the British rule in British North America. William Lyon Mackenzie was never caught by the British and lived in the U.S. until 1849, when the province in Canada, which had been formed out of Lower and Upper Canada in 1841, changed their government system to a responsible government, which granted Mackenzie amnesty, allowing him to return to Canada, where he lived until his death in 1861. It is difficult to find any beneficial purpose for the Upper Canada Rebellion of 1837, although one could argue that by discrediting extremists on the sides of Loyalists as well as reformers, the rise to power of moderates who tried to push responsible government was eased. Be that as it may, many historians believe that the Upper Canada Rebellion was an unnecessary killing, which probably complicated and delayed the transition to self-government. This concludes our short overview of the Upper Canada Rebellion.